Howdy all, Wyrm here. Among the multiple plotlines that were mostly resolved during 6.0 Endwalker was that of the Garlean Empire, one of our primary antagonists since 1.0. After so many years, we finally set foot on the Garlean Homeland, and helped put an end to Xenos' rule and Fandaniel's machinations, both of which left the Empire's citizens to suffer and die. But the Garlean Empire as a whole isn't gone. There are still many pieces in play on the board that will likely be moving very soon. So, in this video we go over the status of what was the Garlean Empire, its homeland, provinces, as well as its military. Let's start off with the main homeland of Garlemald. After the death of Emperor Varus, a full civil war broke out between multiple factions, all with their own aims. This war decimated the capital and most of the surrounding region. To make matters worse, Xenos and Fandaniel were making their own plans in the shadows, which compounded the suffering of the Garlean people. We know all about the events during 6.0 Endwalker, so let's fast forward to the present. With Anima destroyed, and the tower for the most part out of action, a state of normality has returned to Garlemald. The Ilsabard contingent is still stationed at Camp Broken Glass, their primary mission to aid the survivors, untemper any remaining citizens they come across, as well as to aid in the rebuilding of basic infrastructure. The nations of the world have all put their best foot forward to aiding the Garlean people, putting aside past grievances for the greater good. Supplies have been streaming in from Eorzea, Doma, and other nations, especially from Raz-Ad-Han. Maximus said it best regarding this aid. The first step is to provide the people of Garlemald with the bare essentials, that they may return to living normal lives, rather than merely surviving. Though most have warmed to the contingent's presence and the aid coming from outside, many still regard them with distrust. The dogma they were brought up believing about outsiders combined with recent events are not so easily forgotten. Once this mission is completed, the Garleans intend on rebuilding their nation once again, but as to what shape that will take, I feel will be decided in what we discuss next. Garlemald was once a very large empire. Outside of its main homeland, it spanned across their continent and beyond, where they had conquered and subjugated nations, which then became the Empire's provinces. As of right now, we have very little information coming out of these provinces, where most of the elements of the Empire still remain, but this will likely be explored as Endwalker continues. We know the Bosjans have liberated their homeland, and off-screen, the Dalmaskins have taken great strides in their own liberation. Nagxia is another province that was under Garlean rule, but we have little to no information coming from there, but they, like many others, have likely achieved full liberation. It's clear with the fall of the Empire, most if not all provinces that were under the Empire's control have now been liberated or are taking steps to do so. The Garlean Homeland is actually much larger than the area around the former capital, but much of it remains beyond our reach for the time being, along with much of the Ilsabard continent. Places like Corvos to the south, which is Grahatia's birthland, and the original homeland of the Garleans before they were pushed north, prior to the Empire's formation of course. World to the west has been liberated recently, but outside of Turncliffe we don't know much about its current status. A lesser known province is called Halmasque, which resides in Ilsabard's central mountain range. This was also the first nation that the Empire conquered. Lastly, we have the former Republic of Landis, which was conquered by the Empire long ago. But outside of that, and the identity of some of its former citizens, we know little about its current state post-Empire. One of the main reasons we have not heard much from these provinces is likely due to the Garlean Legions, many of which are still active. The legions of the Garlean Empire are a lot like the legions of ancient Rome. The Garlean Empire we know today was heavily inspired by the history of the Roman Empire, and this is readily apparent in the provinces and legions. Like ancient Rome, the Garleans had multiple legions stationed throughout as many provinces, in order to keep order and to deal with any threats to their borders. Let's go over the information we have on each legion in numerical order. The first legion was under the command of Quintus van Sina, but was likely a legion under the direct command of the sitting emperor. This legion was completely loyal to Emperor Varus. When Varus was killed, the first placed the blame on the third legion, notably Nerva Ye Galvus and his father Titus, stating they assassinated Varus to take the throne. The first quickly engaged the third, which was the flame that ignited the civil war. We know now, however, that these accusations were the creation of Fandaniel and Xenos, in order to create fanatical faith in Varus, aka Anima, as a means to their ultimate ends. By the time this came to a head, the first had taken refuge in Tertium, by the time the tower in Anima began to temper everybody in range. Much of the Legion's forces were fighting above ground against the third, and were tempered along with them. The civil war effectively ended at this point, and a fight for survival began. Skip forward to the end of 6.0, Quintus is dead, having killed himself after learning that the 10th Legion was not coming to their aid, and realizing that the Empire had, in almost every sense, ceased to exist. Right before this, however, Quintus, as commander of the First, dismissed his officers and soldiers. In effect, he disbanded the First. What remains of this legion is spread all over the Garlean Homeland, working with the survivors and Ilsabar contingent to rebuild the capital and nation into whatever the now fallen empire may turn into. The second legion is one of the biggest mysteries out of all the legions, because we know absolutely nothing about them. The only reason we knew it existed is because the legions are all given numbers. I have a theory on this legion I will share after we finish this list. The third was formed by Emperor Solus during the first years of his reign. They campaigned for many years in the Northern Territories. For exemplary service to the Empire, the Legion was assigned the prestigious role of serving as the protectors of the Garlean capital. Closer to the present, the Legion was under the command of Nerva Ye Galvus, cousin of Xenos, and one with eyes on the Empire's throne. Things didn't work out so well for this Legion. With the death of Emperor Varus, the First Legion laid the blame on Nerva and his father Titus. These two legions quickly came to blows, igniting the civil war. This war raged on until the capital was in ruins. Later on, when the Tower of Babel and Anima awoke, most of the Third Legion was tempered, including their commander on the field, Virgilia van Corculum. We don't know what happened to Nerva and Titus after the Legion was tempered, but we saw no trace of them when the Ilsabar contingent arrived, meaning they could have fled the homeland at some point, if they were ever there at all. Fast forward to after 6.0, the Third Legion in effect no longer exists. Many of their number were incapacitated by the contingent and were cured of their tempering. This likely includes Virgilia, but we only have sporadic interactions with members of the Third after this battle. Given their original role as the protectors of the capital, it's likely this legion may take up a new role as protectors once more. My guess is we won't have to wait long to find out. The fourth is a legion we are much more familiar with, having battled against it in Bosgia. Under the command of Noah van Gebranth, this legion maintained control over Bosgia, Dalmasca and Naxia, all conquered provinces of Garlemald. It's one of the more unconventional legions, utilising a wide array of combat disciplines, prototype magitech, and any other technology that gives them an advantage, ignoring many of the standard doctrines of the Empire's military. At this time, the civil war in Garlemald was already raging. When the Fourth was ordered to return to the capital, Noah refused this order. Seeing the Empire was doomed to fall, he declared his own intentions, and thus he and the Fourth were branded as traitors to the Empire. Following the battles in Bosgia and its liberation, the Fourth pulled his forces back to Dalmascan territory. The resistances of Dalmasca and Naxia continued to push against the Fourth at this time, riding the momentum of the Eastern Alliance. Months later, the Legion met its ultimate end when Noah was killed by Leon, the latter having taken much of the blame for the losses in Bosgia. Castrum Valnini, which served as the 4th's headquarters, was set ablaze. Noah was found in the ruins by the Dalmascan resistance, his body badly burned, but they were able to identify him. Once word of his death got out, the 4th Legion crumbled. Most of its members surrendered to the resistance, while the rest continued to fight, but were heavily outmatched and defeated soon after. This would seem to spell out the end of the 4th Legion, but rumours still persist that Noah didn't die at all, and his body was misidentified. I for one personally think he accepted his death at Leon's hands without resistance, because he likely suffered from the disease that claimed his father. But for now, official reports state that the 4th and its leadership is no more, and Leon himself disappeared after killing Noah. The last word we hear of the 4th is when the 10th tried to coordinate retaking Garlemald's capital with their aid. However, this venture ended in failure, suggesting the Legion was either unable to be reached, or didn't have the resources to aid them. It could also be that the Legion just ignored the request, given that their former commander had gone rogue, and no longer answered to the Empire. We know next to nothing about the 5th, only that during the events of Endwalker, they were in communication with the 10th about reclaiming the Garlean capital. We don't know what this Legion's response was, but given the 10th tried to unite with them, suggests the Legion may still be active in some fashion. The 6th Legion featured as one of the main antagonists during the events of Heavensward. Their commander was Regula van Hydrus, a soldier of renown in the Empire. The Legion was deployed to Eorzea with the purpose of unearthing the secrets of the Allegan facility Aziz La, specifically their technology and methods to trap primals. They brought their entire force to Eorzea, which included their large dreadnought, the Gratian. When Zervan broke free of his prison in Aziz La, Regula died with honour while fighting alongside the Scions and protecting the young Uncalhai. After the loss of their commander, much of the Legion retreated from Eorzea. However, a sizable force remained in Aziz La, as the Gratian was badly damaged by Shiva when it was getting there. As of right now, this Legion still exists, and assuming the Gratian can fly again, this Legion could return to Garlemald to aid with the rebuilding of their homeland. The 7th played a major role in the events of 1.0. They were the primary antagonists and the force that invaded Eorzea. Their commander was Nael van Darnus, who was in fact his younger sister Ulia, Nael having died some time before. They are the Legion that is seen during the Battle of Carteneau in the trailer for A Realm Reborn. It was this Legion and their commander that brought about the fall of Dalamud that unleashed Bahamut, setting the story of A Realm Reborn in motion. With Nael gone and the region in a state of panic and calamity, the 7th Legion retreated and were not seen again until Shadowbringers. Now under the command of Valens van Varo, they worked to create the fearsome Emerald, Diamond, Sapphire and Ruby weapons. After these weapons were destroyed, and with Valens dead at the hands of Gaius van Baelsar, the remains of the Legion fled while the rest surrendered to allied forces. This Legion ceased to exist after their plans were foiled. The 8th Legion, like the 5th, is a Legion we've only seen mentioned once or twice. They were contacted by the 10th Legion to try and coordinate the retaking of the Garlean capital, but this ended in failure. We don't know this Legion's status, but the fact that the 10th tried means, in their eyes at least, that the Legion is still active in some fashion. The 9th Legion is just as unknown as the 2nd Legion. My theory to come up soon will apply to this Legion as well as the 2nd and others. We don't know much about the 10th Legion, only that they were still an active force during the Civil War, but as far as we know took no active part in the fighting. We first hear word from them from members of the 1st, who state they are awaiting word from the 10th to launch a combined attack to reclaim the Garlean capital. This endeavour ended in failure, however. Since the Civil War, communication between the legions has been almost non-existent. After the last throw of the dice ended with a loss, the 10th thus had no alternative than to turn to the Grand Company of Eorzea for aid. Their envoys went to Alamigo and explained in detail the situation. They stated their plan and that the Legion was also severely depleted, as most of their conscripted forces had deserted. At the conclusion of this meeting, the 10th offered a message to be delivered to Lord Quintus, the commander of the 1st. Have the ill stand down. This was likely one of two coded messages to state either that the Legion had succeeded, or had failed in their reclamation plan. This was also likely a way for the 10th to show their sincerity to the Grand Company. It succeeded, as tensions and hostilities between the 1st Legion and the Ilspar contingent ended with the message being heard by Lord Quintus. The 11th Legion we only have bits and pieces of information on. We know they led the invasion of Naxia roughly 30 years past, which resulted in the subjugation of the nation and it becoming, for the most part, an imperial province. Rumours and stories of the conquering of Naxia state that the Naxians put up stiff resistance, using the jungles to fight guerrilla warfare against the 11th, forcing the Legion to resort to downright savage tactics, and even committing heinous acts against the civilian population in retaliation. Even though they mostly succeeded in their mission, they received a negative standing in the eyes of the Empire and other legions. In the present day, we've not heard much from the 11th, and they were not a part of the report that the 10th gave to the Grand Company, suggesting the legions long since disbanded, or the 10th, desperate as they were, didn't want to work with the 11th. The 12th Legion was the force that ruled over and subjugated the nations of Alamigo and Doma. They were under the command of Xenos, and had developed a fearsome reputation for their brutal tactics and treatment of those under their rule. By the time we breached the palace in Alamigo and defeated Xenos, the Legion was defeated, most of its forces surrendering, including its conscripted forces from Doma, many of which deserted before the final battle, while the rest retreated back to Garlean lands. This Legion isn't mentioned much after these events, but it was an unusual Legion similar to the 4th, where their forces were made up of a lot more conscripted forces from occupied provinces. Our final mention of this Legion came during the closing events of our mission to Garlemald with the contingent, where it was stated that the 10th tried to work with them on a coordinated effort to retake the Garlean capital with the other legions. The fact this ended in failure suggests the legions either disbanded or too depleted to engage in any action. The 13th joins the 2nd and 9th as a legion we know nothing about. My theory, which follows soon, will elaborate more on them. Finally, we have the infamous 14th Legion. This legion was under the command of the legendary Gaius van Baelsar, and served as the main antagonist of A Realm Reborn. Before the beginnings of 2.0, the 14th had already built a great reputation in the eyes of the Empire, by capturing and occupying the nation of Alamigo. They then set their eyes on taking the rest of Eorzea, but came to odds with the 7th Legion whose leader had lost their way. A few years after the calamity, Gaius and the 14th returned to lay claim to Eorzea, setting off the events we see in 2.0. After we defeated Gaius and the 14th in the Praetorium, the surviving members of the Legion retreated back to Garlean territory. Instead of reforming the Legion, the Empire instead integrated its surviving members into the 7th and 12th Legions. That does it for the legions we currently have information on. Now then, onto my theory. You may have noticed there were 3 legions we knew nothing about. The 2nd, 9th and 13th. And a couple more we only have basic information on. The 5th and the 8th. Going back on the legions I did mention in detail, you may have noticed the Empire has a habit of disbanding legions that become depleted or defeated. I'm in 100% theory mode now. It's very possible that some of these legions are active and are stationed in provinces or lands that we've yet to see in game. Given the Garleans' thirst for elegant technology, I would not at all be surprised if one of these lesser known legions, like the 5th or the 8th, was an expeditionary force like the Ilsabar contingent. They may well be stationed on a different continent, like Mericidia for example, a land that holds many secrets, ones which the Garleans would love to have. The 6th Legion is a great example of this, as they were deployed to Eorzea specifically to claim Allagan technology and knowledge for the Empire's use. As for the 2nd, 9th and 13th Legions, given the fact that the 10th didn't try to reach out to them, and they did reach out to the likes of the 4th, which publicly declared itself at odds with the Empire, this may hint that these 3 legions are not actually active at all, or at least not as far as the 10th Legion is concerned. But that does it for my report on the state of the Garlean Empire after 6.0. Thanks for watching everyone. I'd love to hear your opinion on this subject, and if you have any info that was not included, please leave a comment with that as well. Click like to show your enjoyment of this video, and consider subscribing to stay informed about my future videos. Thanks all, and now, as always, have a good one.